So we've taken the time, we've identified our cause of action, we've used a secondary source to better understand our topic. We have a jump start on our research with the primary authority that we were led to by that secondary source. And we've also started to think about which of the elements of that cause of action are going to be the most at issue for us, so the hardest for us to prove, because again, those are then the cases that we're going to need to find, cases that really show us what those elements look like in practice. And so now we're ready to jump into the case law after we've spent that time in the secondary source. So let's just go ahead and run a search. I'm just going to go ahead and run a search for defamation. So now I have 3 rules for narrowing these cases down to the most relevant cases. What terms do I add back into this that are going to narrow this down to get me a good result set that I can start really weeding through? And the first one is narrow by cases that contain an element that is most at issue for you, again, or that will be the hardest for you to prove. So just like we talked about. The second way to narrow down your cases would be to search within these results for the standard of law or the test that the court is applying. So for example, if you had a totality of circumstances test or a sufficiently factual test or a reasonable person test, you would want to put those terms in to see what that looked like in actuality. What does this test look like in this case law? And then finally, you could also, this is probably the one I use most often, is narrowing by a legally significant fact. Now, all facts are not created equal. When you guys get your problems or when you're in front of a client, there's going to be a lot of information that's going to be thrown at you. There are going to be directions, there are going to be colors, there are going to be times of day. It's your job as an attorney to weed through those facts and figure out which ones are legally significant and which ones are just extra. The legally significant facts are going to be the facts that determine whether or not you win or lose this case. So if that fact was different, would it make a difference in the outcome? And so for narrowing down these 10,000, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start with a legally significant fact. In my hypo, as a reminder, we have a U.S. Senator, and we're asking whether or not he can be held liable for defamation for statements made in press releases, newsletters, and on TV. So I'm going to go ahead up here at the top to my search, and I'm going to add defamation and senator or public official. Now I'm using basic connectors, the and connector and the or connector, and I'm utilizing the quotation marks because that will find public official as that exact phrase. So this will search for defamation and senator or defamation and public official. We have over 7,000 cases, and this is a little too broad to really start spending our time digging in. So I'm going to say that the next place to do our narrowing down, and this really should be a rule, but it's so much of a gimme, I didn't make it a rule. Over here on the left, let's narrow down by jurisdiction, because you only want to find those cases that are binding on your jurisdiction. And so I didn't really say for a jurisdiction, but let's just say we're in the Ninth Circuit. So I would want Ninth Circuit, but I'd also want Supreme Court cases. So under federal, we'll do select multiple, we'll do Supreme Court, and then also Ninth Circuit. So that takes us from 7,000 to 528. It's still a little much, but utilizing the algorithm, it's going to throw the most relevant ones again up to the top for us. I may want to see if I could get this even more specific. Now, the reason why I like to do this, start with a big and broad, wider net, and then narrow down, is that I have different options available to me. I maintain that flexibility. Whereas if I were to craft a super fancy search up here at the top, I wouldn't know which one went wrong. And then if I had to start over, I would lose all of my cases. But now I know that I have at least 528 cases in the Supreme Court or Ninth Circuit talking about defamation and senator or defamation and public official. So I can add any more terms within our search within results. And if something goes wrong, I can just quickly get rid of those and get back to these 528. So this would be a good thing to do if I wanted to go ahead and try our press release, maybe as a search term, or publication as a search term, or public or private as a search term. If we want to get more specific, you may have to craft a couple different baby searches, but we can do all of that within this initial 528. So I'll go ahead and I'll just add our press release. So that is another legally significant fact. And again, I'm putting it in quotation marks. And we'll see if any of our cases also talk about press release. So that takes us down to 44. It's a little bit narrow, but like I said, if I wanted to get back to my result set and try something else, I just X out of it and I'm automatically back to my 528. So that is step 2, narrowing our results, looking in case law to find additional cases. We're going to end with how to know if you found a good case in this results set. But what I wanted to leave you with is back on the main search page, I utilized a basic terms and connector search with this, with our and our or and our quotation marks. If you forget what those are, you can always utilize advanced search up here at the top on the main search page. That's going to open up a guided search form where you can fill in these boxes and have Lexis create the search for you. Or you can utilize the terms and connectors kind of cheat sheet over here on the right. If you get really good with these and you want to look at the full gamut of possibilities, do view all connectors and commands. If I could leave you with anything though, if there's ever a way that you want to narrow your search down, know that it can be done. It's just a matter of learning the right connectors and tools. So that's when you start utilizing this advanced search, view all connectors and commands to see what you want to do, and then there's going to be a tool that's going to allow you to narrow it down that way.